Hi, I'm Ari Finling, and I'm from New York City. I love New York City. I think it's one of the most exciting cities in the world. I enjoy driving, but I almost never drive in the city. For one thing, it's too expensive. And if you do drive in the city, you spend most of your time stuck in traffic, and parking is even more expensive than gas. So I always get around using public transportation. New York City has a great bus network, and the subway system is convenient and definitely the cheapest. But public transportation in New York City is much more expensive than in many other cities. Luckily, since June 2013, there's been a cheaper alternative to the buses, subways, and cars in Manhattan, and it's a healthier alternative too. This is Penn Station, the busiest railway station in New York City. More than 500,000 people travel through this station every day. However, located just several blocks from Penn Station is this, one of the many solar-powered docking stations for nearly 6,000 Citi Bikes, located in hundreds of stations around New York City and Brooklyn. At each of these stations, you can borrow a bike for making short journeys around the city. Citi Bikes are available all day, every day. Each station has a touch screen and a map of the area. Citi Bikes is privately operated by New York City Bike Share and supported by user fees, sponsorships, and advertising. Citigroup and MasterCard have provided most of the funding for the bike share. You have to pay a small fee to join the scheme, but then you can borrow a bike. The bike sharing scheme has proved popular both with commuters and visitors to the city. Of course, New York City isn't the only city with a bike sharing scheme, and it isn't a new idea. There have been schemes around since the 1960s, but with new technology like GPS, cash cards, and smartphones, local authorities have been able to make the schemes more secure and much easier to use. There are now bike sharing schemes in over 165 cities around the world, with more starting up all the time. Some of the most successful schemes are the Velib in Paris, Dublin Bikes in Dublin, Ireland, Boris Bikes in London, Bising in Barcelona, and Bixi in Montreal, Canada. But the biggest scheme is in Hangzhou, China, which has more than 60,000 bicycles. Unfortunately, despite the enthusiasm for city bikes, New York City still isn't the most bike-friendly city. There are some bike lanes, but often bikes, cars, and buses have to share the roads, and this can be dangerous. So there are a few things everyone can do to make their bike trips safer. Whether you're on a city bike or your own bike. First, you have to obey the rules of the road. You must not ride a bike on the sidewalk, and you must not ride a bike through red lights. You should wear a helmet and bright clothes. You must be at least 16 or older to ride a city bike. You really shouldn't use your phone or wear headphones while cycling. You must be able to see and hear what's going on around you. But if you're careful, a bike is the best way to see New York City, and being able to borrow one for a small fee makes it even better.
My favorite New York landmark isn't a skyscraper or a statue. It's a bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge. I see it every day, but I bet you recognize it too. Its Gothic architecture, stone towers, and unusual cable design have made it a symbol of New York for over 130 years. The bridge, which connects Brooklyn and Manhattan, is almost 6,000 feet long, 85 feet wide, and weighs over 14,000 tons.
When it was built, it was the only bridge across the East River. It was much longer and a lot taller than any other bridge in the world.
And the story of its construction is as epic and inspiring as the bridge itself. I've come here to the Brooklyn Museum to find out more about the building of the bridge. John Augustus Roebling, the man who designed the bridge, was an immigrant from Germany. He started the bridge in 1867, but died in a tragic work accident 2 years later. His son, Washington, who was also an engineer, took over the project, but he too suffered tragedy during the bridge's construction. He had an accident which left him paralyzed. Fortunately, his wife, Emily, who had also studied engineering, was able to help. She became the link between her husband and the construction managers and workers. Today, there's a plaque dedicated to the Roeblings, here at the bridge's entrance. The workers that built the bridge were only paid $2 a day. If they hadn't worked as hard as they did, the bridge would never have been finished. But it was, and the Brooklyn Bridge opened on May 24th, 1883. There were some rumors that the bridge wasn't strong enough. But if the bridge hadn't been strong enough, it surely would have collapsed when a circus owner marched 21 elephants across it. I use the bridge every day, and I'm not the only one. More than 120,000 vehicles, 4,000 pedestrians, and 2,600 cyclists cross the bridge every single day. This massive amount of traffic couldn't possibly have been predicted by the Roeblings. But amazingly, they built the bridge 6 times stronger than was necessary at the time. Today, it is one of the oldest suspension bridges in the world. However, over the years, the bridge has changed. Until 1944, trams, called streetcars, used to run along the bridge's central lanes. Today, the bridge has 6 lanes for vehicles and a central walkway for pedestrians. Some vehicles, like buses and commercial trucks, can't cross the bridge because they're too heavy. In the 1980s, the bridge's floodlights were switched on, and this night view became one of the most famous sights of New York. Whether viewed by day or night, the Brooklyn Bridge is a magnificent structure. It is a global icon that has often been called the 8th wonder of the world.
Hi, my name's Jean Godo. I'm from New York City and I'm a huge movie fan. I've lived in New York all my life, and for a film buff like me, it must be the greatest place in the world.
Walking through the city is like walking through one gigantic movie set. You can see famous movie locations wherever you go.
This is Cortlandt Alley in Chinatown. It might not look iconic, but it's probably the most famous alley in the world. The Hollywood version of New York is full of dark, secret alleyways like this.
You know the type. Rusty fire escapes, graffiti on the walls, and trash on the ground.
But in the real New York, there are hardly any alleyways at all.
So this one little alley has appeared in many blockbuster films, like Crocodile Dundee, TV dramas like Boardwalk Empire, and of course, New York cop shows like NYPD Blue and Law and Order.
Unlike in the movies, the real Cortlandt Alley is perfectly safe. The most dangerous activity here is construction work. This is Flushing Meadows Corona Park in the borough of Queens. I used to live near here, and it's still my favorite park in New York. And it's also the setting of one of my all-time favorite movie scenes, the climax from the first Men in Black.
In the film, Agent J, Will Smith, and Agent K, Tommy Lee Jones, shoot down a huge UFO just over Flushing Meadows. It crashes straight into this, the Unisphere, which was built as the centerpiece of the 1964 World's Fair. The park became the ultimate symbol of the space age. And the creators of Men in Black were able to use the Unisphere to create the perfect sci-fi setting. Flushing Meadows might have the space age factor, but Manhattan is still the most recognizable area in New York. And nowhere is as iconic as the Empire State Building. When it first opened in 1931, the Empire State Building was already world famous. It was the tallest structure in the world and symbolized the modern age. In 1933, it became an international icon when it starred in the movie King Kong. The film was an instant classic. The image of a giant ape clinging to the top of the building is still one of the most famous in cinematic history. In fact, this one building is almost as iconic as the city itself.
Almost, but not quite. New York has appeared in thousands of films. People who have never been here feel like they know the place. You should come and see the city for yourself. It really is just like the movies.